Welcome to Critical Junction, episode 39. I'm Mark.
I'm Luke.
I'm Jill.
And in 1954, science fiction writer L Ron Hubbard presided over a shotgun wedding between the words science and tology, not a real word, and gave birth to the bastard child that would become known as the religion of Scientology. A veteran of the Second World War, Hubbard published his Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, in 1950, a book that would become the foundation of Scientology. In it, Hubbard explains how lasting scars from negative experiences result in what he termed quote-unquote engrams, and the way to rid oneself of those engrams was to undergo a type of therapy he introduced known as auditing, where an individual would meet with a counselor and answer questions with the aim of purging these engrams to allow the analytic mind to resume control. The beliefs of Scientology later evolved to include the story of Xenu, which is normally reserved for people who reach a certain level within the church and pay an exorbitant fee to have access to it. But thanks to the advent of the internet and South Park, we know how Xenu, ruler of the Galactic Confederation, brought billions of his people to Earth 75 million years ago in intergalactic DC-8 jets, placed them in proximity to volcanoes, and brutally murdered them by blowing them up with hydrogen bombs. The souls, or thetans, of these now exploded aliens remain to inhabit the bodies of future humans, causing them spiritual harm that can be corrected through auditing. In 1952, Hubbard introduced a device called an electropsychometer, or e-meter, which, almost like a polygraph, would measure the strength of a small electric current that runs through the individual's body as they answer thetan-destroying auditing questions. 2 years later, Hubbard filed incorporation papers in LA, and the Church of Scientology was born. Hubbard would remain head of the church until 1966, and after disappearing from the public due to increasing scrutiny about his new church, he died in 1986 when his protege and Tom Cruise fanboy David Miscavige took over leadership. Today, Scientology is recognized in many countries as a legitimate religion, while other countries like Germany have banned the so-called faith over allegations of severe abuse by church officials against their members. Examples of this abound. In ex-Scientologist Leah Remini's 2015 memoir, Troublemaker, she explains how church members are encouraged to lie to parents and loved ones about signing billion-year contracts, how the church handles sexual abuse, including statutory rape, by blaming the victim, and how the church labels any member who comes out to publicly criticize them or leave the church as a quote-unquote suppressive person, and bars them from having any future contact with family who remain. So, is Scientology an abusive cult, a religion, or a greedy corporation? Or is it a strange combination of all three? Let's talk about that.
Well, it seems like most religions are a combination of all three of those things, I would think, no? Like, it's not just Scientology. It's,
I think the difference between a religion and a cult is pretty much a semantic one.
Well, is it not numbers?
That's
you need a certain number of people to go from cult.
Well, it's not only...
I don't think it's numbers.
It's not specifically numbers. Like, for something to be labeled as a cult, they have to be... it has to be virtually impossible to leave that cult. And they also have this leader worship where the leader of the organization becomes almost like some kind of godlike figure unto themselves.
Hold on. You've got all of that with Scientology, whether it's LRH or
David Miscavige.
But those aren't the credentials of cultness. You're describing what cults usually are.
No, in order for something to be classified
there's
as a cult,
criteria,
those
right?
criteria.
Yeah.
So that you would just basically
brainwashing is another big one in order for something to be considered a cult, which is really...
And arguably auditing is a kind of brainwashing process, right? Like you see it really well illustrated in the movie The Master. Have either of you guys seen?
Yeah.
This Paul Thomas Anderson movie, which was frigging brilliant.
It's no Battlefield Earth, I'll give you that.
So I mean, technically, Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't claim that this is a movie about Scientology or L Ron Hubbard.
It's more of a story about
but it definitely is. Otherwise, it's just a long list of coincidental
right.
Points. But the practice of auditing, they show it in that movie, and it's basically the guy holds the two cans and that are connected to the e-meter, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, PSH, is questioning the subject, and when he talks about something that when he asks him a question that registers something on the e-meter, if it registers something on the e-meter, he like just repeats the question like over and over again, and that kind of it creates this kind of hypnotic state where your kind of critical defenses or whatever get broken down gradually. I mean it's plainly a kind of hypnotism that's happening there.
Yeah,
but they deny at all that there's any kind of hypnotism.
Well, that's the thing. Like the Church of Scientology's main defense when it comes to any type of criticism is deny and discredit. Right? Yeah. As soon as anyone comes out and says anything about them, well, no, that's not how it goes. Because in order for them to do that, like I was watching a documentary or an interview with Leah Remini earlier today in preparation for this, but she was saying how if you come out against the church and you say something that isn't specifically on the nose accurate to what they do, immediately, nope, that's wrong. That's not what we do.
Yeah, if there's a semantic difference between them, then they're given permission, basically through their training, to shut down their mind and dismiss the entire, dismiss you entirely if you're presenting some kind of critical argument.
Right, and the second half of that, the discrediting thing, is literally within hours of someone coming out against the church, a website will go up being like, this person's full of shit, they're like completely you can't believe anything they say, they're a liar, and blah blah blah. So that's their main defense. It's always deny and discredit. And you see that, like, there have been countless documentaries about Scientology.
But I've seen the same thing happen in fundamentalist Islam.
Right.
Where even if you're actually talking specifically about passages in the Quran, they have some way of rationalizing that, you failed to explicitly mention the sequence that it appears in the Quran.
So then you're wrong.
Quran.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So everything you're saying is wrong.
So all is dismissed.
Yeah, all is dismissed. And that's fundamentally dishonest, right? That's fallacious arguing, right?
And just because you're wrong on one minor detail doesn't mean your entire argument is wrong, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but even just going beyond that, some of the things that they allegedly do to people who criticize them, especially former members of the church, they'll send private investigators to their houses and stake them out and just make their lives a living hell.
Oh yeah, in Europe they're actually calling it psychological terrorism.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just like simple incidents of harassment.
Right.
It's sustained long-term like psychological
torture.
Siege,
and this
torture.
It's not just one or two people
terrorism.
saying this. This is a mass reporting, right? There are so many people who've come away from the Church of Scientology report this happening to them or to their loved ones.
And the thing that bugs me is, like, if this whole technique is effective, then why are 30-year veterans of the church who have gone through the bridge, right, and made it all the way to higher levels?
Are we calling them cleared? They've been cleared?
Yeah,
kind of
people
thing?
who have gone clear.
Okay, yeah.
Like,
this does happen, though? Like, you can achieve clearness? Like,
well, so it's a very small minority of people who actually manage to get super high in the levels, because throughout that journey through the bridge, you can actually, like, if you fail, or if you have some kind of impediment or something that reveals I don't know, some kind of like suppressive thoughts or something like that.
Let's just call it non-clarity.
Then what they do is they bump you back to the beginning sometimes.
Oh, and then you have to pay more.
So you have to. So
basically,
they erase all of the certificates or whatever that you've managed to earn and build up through your journey across the bridge. And so not only do they bump you back to the beginning, but they actually like erase the paper trail of your having made it through and then you have to do the whole thing all over again and pay for that journey.
That's the important point, is none of this is free. Like, for you to go up in levels and to get your thetans removed or get clear or whatever, you have to pay for this shit. And it's thousands and thousands of dollars. Especially at once you hit the operating thetan level 3 and get to
it can go up to $500,000.
Yeah,
like,
easily.
I think the last I heard specifically reported is like from back in 2006, and the average is 380,000. 380,000.
Don't you have to be, in a sense, clear to be an auditor? Like, I don't understand how the numbers.
No,
can...
yeah,
no,
that's
you don't.
the thing.
Yes,
No. You have training
You have to be an
right
official in the church. I think that's pretty much.
Well,
it.
you must be at a certain level to be an auditor themselves, because they're dealing with.
I don't know.
With
No, you don't. You don't have to be clear to be an auditor, because the auditing is just a technique. You don't have to actually. When you're auditing, or when you're being audited, it's not necessarily about being taught anything by the person who's conducting the audit.
You're basically being interrogated. They call it a form of counseling.
So the person who's conducting the audit is just is following a very well procedured kind of.
It's a mechanism, I guess.
Kind of technique.
Yeah. I see.
So you can learn that without actually.
I was seeing some similarities between some early psychoanalytical experimentation and stuff like that with the auditing approach and the use of language.
That's the other important aspect of LRH's pathology and of the Church of Scientology's dogma or whatever. Is how much they're against any type of legitimate psychiatry, any type of existing established science of the mind, and
it's forbidden.
Exactly.
Well, they're basically saying you have to abandon all that and fully encompass what we're doing.
They have a lot of restrictions on what their members are allowed to do. Like, they can't go out and seek external information about Scientology. It all has to come from within. If they're using the internet and one of their churches, it's all filtered, so you can't access anything beyond what they're allowed to access. It's strictly controlled. And this is why, just circling back to the whole cult thing, everything about Scientology paints it as a cult, right? The level of control, the level of, let's call it brainwashing, for lack of a better term, the inability to leave the church without massive problems following you afterwards.
I mean, what I find incredible is that throughout the history of the Church of Scientology, there's all kinds of criminal activity that had been prosecuted and cataloged.
Well, that's another thing. Just briefly, they also issue the normal justice system, because they saw L Ron Hubbard as bringing in a new era of justice for mankind. So they frown on the justice system and handle everything internally.
Well, sorta, unless it suits them to use the justice system.
Yeah,
because what they managed to do to get them legitimized and to manage to win their tax-exempt religious status was to actually harass the justice system and or abuse the justice system by suing the IRS and suing individuals who happen to work for the IRS. And they brought hundreds and hundreds of lawsuits against individuals who are working for the IRS, just applying.
Right. It sounds like they're taking full advantage of capitalism in that sense.
Well,
they're using their money.
It's an organized crime syndicate
In
that leveled this massive campaign against a branch of government.
It's pretty impressive,
to
really.
strong arm them into just giving them a privileged status.
What they're taking advantage of is the ease with which it's possible to register a new religion in the U.S. because of their religious freedom laws or whatever. It's super easy. John Oliver set up a fucking church just, as part of his show.
And is it now deemed a religion, then? Whatever John Oliver set up?
It was. At the time, it met all the criteria that you had to file with the IRS to be considered a religion, and they became Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. Like that was the name of their church, but they were now tax exempt, right? They had
Right.
They met all the criteria, and they registered as a church. It's that easy in the U.S. In
I
places
thought it would take numbers, like a...
no.
Oh,
If you have a regular quote unquote
I don't know why I
congregation,
thought that then.
if you have a we'll call it a regular congregation. It could be 2 people meeting every Sunday in someone's
So
basement.
we could be deemed a religion.
In
right
the
now,
US.
Critical Junction, the podcast, we're
If
a
we
religion.
decided to
If we-
register in the U.S. as a religion, we could pull it off because we have a regular place of worship, the place we're recording in.
Yep.
We meet
These vaulted cathedral ceilings in your dining room here.
exactly. We meet every 2 weeks to do an episode, which we have. Let's call it we have a set of rituals where I read the first gospel of the introduction, and we can just check those boxes, and eventually now we're a church. That's how simple.
I'm
it
an
is.
ordained minister of the Church of Dutyism online.
Nice.
Dutyism?
Yeah, it's an online religion that was started based off of the Big Lebowski.
Back when you
yes, I've
still
heard of it.
back when you could still do it, I was an ordained minister with the Universal Life Church.
Oh yeah, really?
The internet religion thing where you can just become a minister.
Nice.
It
Have
was-
you got your certificate?
yeah, no, I have a certificate.
Is it on the wall upstairs?
No, it's not.
No.
It's in the closet or something.
I'm all disappointed.
I don't think you can. Anyway, but in places like Canada and other countries, it's not that easy to do. Like if you look at the criteria to become a registered or recognized religion in Canada, it's super difficult.
Oh, okay.
Like,
I see. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it like you have to be considered. You have to be first of all a charity in Ontario specifically. I don't know about the other provinces, but in Ontario, you need to demonstrate that you are a charity tied to religious motivation or something. Like there's a whole list of things that you need to meet, and if you don't meet that, or if one of those boxes drops off at some point, you lose your status. Like the Church of Wicca at one point was recognized as a religion in Ontario, and for whatever reason they got deregistered because they
Didn't keep it up even.
yeah they didn't keep it up.
Right.
So yeah, so
in
the
other
Church of
words,
Scientology is really taking advantage of that in the U.S. That's why they're registered in L.A. as their headquarters, because it's not that simple to do elsewhere.
I see. Okay.
And the thing is, they can't hoard their money, right? So the Church of Scientology, like the people who are at the top, like David Miscavige, the guy at the top, he's ultra rich, right? And the church, like the revenues coming into the church are like more than $1 billion. But the way they get around these regulations to keep their tax exempt status is that they continue sinking money back into the church. So that's why they're like at one time they were like the number 2 property owner in all of LA.
Were they second to the Catholic Church by any chance?
I don't know. Probably second to McDonald's.
No, yeah, the Church of McDonald's.
Starbucks.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So if they can basically transform their income into salaries for members of the church and into money that they use to buy properties in the name of the church, then that's fine. But that money couldn't just go into like a bank account for the corporate person of the church, because then they would become a profit-driven organization and they would lose that tax-exempt status.
So let's talk about David Miscavige for a little while. Like I said, in 1986, he became the head of the church after Hubbard died. This guy was a protege of Hubbard's. And today, he, according to a lot of eyewitness testimony and people who've left the church, he rules the place with an iron fist, they say. He's been reported as being physically and emotionally abusive to church members and to church officials. There's a whole mystery surrounding what happened to his wife at some point.
Yeah, I've seen more than one of these people that had made their way up into the kind of corporate inner circle, like the executive inner circle, right? People like Marty Rathbun, I think, is one of them, and Mike Rinder, I think, is another guy. There's a bunch of people that have come out saying that like there are incidences where they're with Miscavige and he actually like beats the shit out of them, like like punches them out, gets them down, chokes them, throttles them, gets them on the ground, kicks them when they're down on the ground.
We're not talking like
he's beating the shit out of them, and they're taking it. Just
but we're not talking Jian Gameshi Good Times kind of thing.
No.
Oh, okay, I see.
No. He's just pissed, and he has the privilege of being able to just express his anger
and get away with
physically and get away with it because he's basically like the Pope of that church.
Even David Miscavige's father, Ron Miscavige, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about this, but his father had to refer to David Miscavige as sir at one point. Like, this guy was 70 years old, and he escaped the church because, like, he found out it was bullshit.
Right.
But the fact that the guy's own father was put down like that, like, he would refer to him as Ron in public, and just he wouldn't say dad if there were other church members around. To him, he was just another underling. Like, that's the extent to which this guy is just out of control with power.
That's another common thread through these cult phenomenon, right? Is this kind of warping of the sort of natural, spontaneous family dynamic that just emerges throughout most civilization, right? There's like a familiarity between, I mean, unless you're from an unfortunate kind of abusive family or whatever, where your parents are negligent and you have no relationship with them. Naturally, there's like a thing where you refer to your mom or dad as mom or dad, right? By it's basically a title for what they are for you in your life, right? And with these cults, there's often like this kind of thing where that family unit, that nuclear family kind of unit, is completely erased, and the child is more absorbed into the organization generally, and the family is the cult overall rather than the nuclear unit.
Yeah, that's especially true in Scientology when it comes to the Sea Org, the Sea Organization, which they call their religious order within the church. As soon as you sign up to become a member of this thing, it's the whole idea of we're your family now, right? And if you do anything against us, if you abandon us or whatever, you will be shunned and you will not be allowed to speak to your own nuclear family.
Right. This isn't the only religion. A lot of the fundamentalist religions seem to sort of do the same sort of thing. No, am I wrong?
In some cases,
yeah, where you've got like child soldiers and stuff. Kids are not like controlled or owned by their parents. They're subsumed by the overall religion, right? And they're like fair game in terms of being made soldiers of the sort of the theocratic goal or whatever, right? Or their mission, the theocratic mission. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've heard that Miscavige in particular is super suspicious of kids because in this whole ideology with the Thetans and stuff and these these spirits kind of spanning many physical lifetimes, essentially a child is not a child as we understand a child to be. Like, there's no such thing as an innocent, naive,
right? Because they're dealing with a reincarnation
entity that needs to be shaped and is learning and shit like that.
So a child can be born 1,000,000 years old.
That's it, exactly.
Yeah,
and most likely they're a suppressive person.
Yeah, the reincarnation excuse is how they justify their billion-year contract things. Because if you join the Sea Org, which is where the billion-year contract applies to, I think. Once you join that organization, you belong to them. So once you sign that contract, once you reincarnate, you're going to keep working for the Sea Org, right? You come back, you work for them again. You're indebted to them for a billion
how that
years.
Works. Each body has to sign a new contract, though.
No, your soul has signed it, and now you're.
But how do you prove that you're that previous soul?
I don't know. It's all bullshit, anyways.
You know what I mean? They must have you sign other papers, like. You can't just go, no, I'm Claire from, 2 decades ago. Like,
yeah. I'm that other Scientologist that died in 1972.
You don't remember.
I've already signed these papers. I'm not doing it again.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm already at this level. Like,
I'm level
give me
8.
a break here, guys. No, sorry, down to the other level. Sorry, guys. No.
You got to start over.
That's an
No
interesting
Claire
point.
number.
Let's touch briefly on the Church of Scientology's use of celebrities, like Tom Cruise, for example. I don't know why it is, but they
I feel sad first of all, I feel sad for John Travolta, because until Tom Cruise became a thing when he made Top Gun and
Travolta was the
It Thunder. Guy. Travolta was the it guy. He was the guy that they brought up on stage and stuff because he was the big celebrity.
What did Travolta have at that point? Like, Look Who's Talking? Like,
no, that was later in his career. He had Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, okay, we're talking like the old 70s stuff.
The kind of unique thing about John Travolta is that he actually joined the church and got into this self-help stuff when he was just starting out as an actor. So right from his like very first job that he got as an actor, getting like a main the main part in some kind of like horror movie or whatever. Right from then he was a member of the church, and then he managed to get like bigger things like Welcome Back, Kotter, where he became nationally famous. Yeah, up your nose with a rubber hose. He became nationally famous with that, and then he did Saturday Night Fever and just kept going, right?
Yeah.
And so the church basically glommed onto him and used.
So we're saying in the 80s he was less popular, and then Tom Cruise came along.
It's just that he up until Tom Cruise was there, he was the top.
He was the top dog. Top Gun.
Oh, God. And then Tom Cruise was the young new shit, right?
Yeah.
And
they'll bend
more easily manipulable because he's not even a real human being.
Yeah. Well, more the same age too as David Miscavige too. So
they're best buds. Like Miscavige was Tom Cruise's best man at his wedding with Katie Holmes. Like he was right there along with all these other Scientology celebrities for some reason.
His marriage seems more like a business transaction.
It was like the whole idea. This is a fascinating story that I was reading, but like the whole idea behind Katie Holmes was that the church and in general, and in particular David Miscavige, wanted to find the perfect person for Tom Cruise. And like when he was married to Nicole Kidman, the church was like, no, fuck it, she's not working out for you. So they destroy the marriage. The same thing with Penelope Cruz, I think it was. And then they finally settled on Katie Holmes, and they just went through this entire process of getting her into the church and making her the ideal mate for this guy. Like for some reason, he's like a saint to them, right? I don't know what it is about celebrity, but
they think he's out there saving the world.
Yeah, and a lot of celebrities attribute their success when they're Scientologists to the practices of the religion, so-called, right? They say they learned so much about themselves, they went through the auditing process, and they got rid of all their negativity and shit, and now look how successful they are. And that's the image that the church wants to portray to the rest of the world.
Right.
Is if you go through these steps, and if you follow our techniques and all these weird things that science fiction writer L Ron Hubbard came up with in a bullshit book about therapy when he had no credentials to do it.
Dianetics,
This is what will result, right?
So it seems like it all started off with Dianetics.
It did. Yeah.
And then there was trouble, and he had to take it a step further to basically make it a religion and bring in the technology and basically up it a little bit.
He tried to legitimize it a little bit by
Well, and he did. It's not as if he tried. He did. Not legitimize, but I mean he took it a step further and made it successful.
So the thing is, I think that IRS trouble was happening like long before the church actually won its tax-exempt status.
Like back in the 60s?
It long had trouble with the IRS and stuff for tax evasion and money laundering and all this kind of stuff. And LRH had to flee the country at one point. That's to some extent why the Sea Org exists, right? He had like this fleet of three...
The international waters thing.
3 ships.
A lot of people had to flee the country at that point if you were suspected of being a communist or just...
Yeah, but like...
Well, this is in the 60s, I believe, that he did...
So past when did the McCarthy era
That was in the 50s.
50s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Anyway. So he for a while he was like not sailing, but he had his ships going through the Caribbean, and then he started establishing like some locations in England. Anyway, he had to flee the U.S. Because he was definitely a target of this like tax evasion stuff.
Right.
Yeah, like the Sea Org has military ranks associated to it. Like they have this whole structure behind them.
Yeah, so he was in the Navy during World War II.
Yeah, but he fought in World War II, but all the things that are attributed to him, like the Purple Heart and shit, that never fucking happened. Like he wasn't a hero. He served, and he didn't do it very well.
No, yeah. Apparently, he had. There were a few incidents of like basically wasting ordnance, right? Like he bombed like some rocks in the sea
for no reason.
For no reason, he was
a shitty soldier.
He was a shitty soldier.
I think he shelled some kind of Mexican island or something like that, and that's when he was finally like relieved of his duty because it was like just one fuck up too many.
Right.
And
so yeah, that's important to remember when we say he served in World War II.
It seems like everything that he did, like there's like hundreds of pages apparently, or dozens of pages, maybe hundreds of pages of reporting on his
he was written up a lot.
Navy record. He was written up a lot.
He was trouble. Okay.
He was trouble, and
let's just call him Klinger from MASH. More dress.
In World War
Klinger
II.
was trying to get out. He thought L Ron Hubbard.
He thought he was doing good things.
He thought he was doing the right thing. But all of those incidents kind of speak to his paranoid mindset,
psychosis.
and his psychosis and stuff. This guy had mental health problems.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is there not even evidence that he, back in the 50s, said something to a friend and said, I bet I could create a religion?
See, okay, yeah, that's the other story I wanted to get into. Like the origin, I guess the seed of the origin of Scientology was that Hubbard was writing all these science fiction books, and they weren't very good. They, most of them bombed.
Yeah.
So he got together with a bunch of his friends, and he's like, I'm tired of writing for a penny a word here. Like, what should we do? And one dude, he's like, you know what? You should probably start a religion because you can make a lot more money doing that than you writing books.
Yeah.
So they started pitching ideas back and forth, and Hubbard's jotting all this shit down, and those notes eventually became Dianetics, the foundational book behind Scientology. It all stemmed from you know what? You can make more money starting a religion.
Yeah, right. So it blatantly did start off as some sort of a business campaign almost, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Scam from the get-go.
Yeah. Fish oil, man.
Yeah.
Elaborate fish oil.
I mean, it's funny how these kind of blatantly, these blatant scam artists become like deified in a religion. Like the last one before Scientology would be Mormonism, right? With Joseph Smith. The guy is like...
His magic spectacles.
Like his whole profile speaks to nothing but being a con artist, and yet no, that's fine because he started Mormonism, and we're gonna trust that his being able to read like divine tablets with the aid of some divine stone.
Without actually reading them.
Without
being able to read.
Yeah. Like all of that. No, we trust it. Even though I guess God chose to give this to a known scam artist, we believe it because we're so fucking brainwashed.
Because Jesus.
Because Jesus, yeah. Because if we, I wonder if it's because Pascal's wager, right? Like
that might have been
it. I wonder if that thing, Pascal's wager, is just.
Can you remind me what the Pascal's wager thing is?
Pascal's wager is that, like...
it's safer to believe in God just in case he exists than it is to not.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But it can be stretched out to, it's safer to believe this religion or whatever, because if I disbelieve, then I'm going to hell.
Right.
Okay.
So it doesn't even just have to be about God. You can just use that kind of emotional blackmail against credulous and gullible and vulnerable people.
Yeah, sure. Set up a threat and you've got them, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, like, if I'm thinking critically about the history of this person on which the whole church is based, then I'm being a suppressive person and I might go to hell. You know?
What I find super funny about Scientology is that the further you go up, the more clear you are said to be, and therefore the more critically you're supposedly thinking.
Right.
Yet you can't.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
That
It's
is
very
a very good
paradoxical.
point. It is very paradoxical because, like, the higher up you go, the less critical thinking abilities you have at your disposal because
The
you've
more
been
indoctrinated
brainwashed.
you are.
Exactly. You've been indoctrinated and brainwashed by what the church is telling you to believe.
Right.
The whole auditing process is just, like you said earlier, Gilles, question after question after question, repeated over and over again until you get this thing drilled into your head.
Well, I'm going to bring up like psychoanalysis can be viewed kind of similarly in the sense that you're basically trying to restructure your thoughts with words, re-evaluating and then restructuring kind of thing, it would seem. And
therapy seems like there's a lot of therapy that's about sort of reconciling yourself with past traumas and you're exploring your memories and basically dealing with them so that you can move beyond them, right?
And
there's a lot of that in Scientology.
Well, the main difference between...
like when you're clearing your engrams, you're doing that same thing. You're trying to focus on them so that you can get rid of them.
Right. But one of the key differences is that when it comes to things like psychotherapy, it's the patient talking without so much intervention on the part of the therapist. For the most part, it depends on the type of therapy that you're doing, but it'll usually be a more one-sided conversation where you're talking about and justifying what it is you've been through to a therapist. Whereas with Scientology, it's the other way around. You're being interrogated by this person who's posing as a counselor or whatever, or the auditor, and they're trying to implant ideas into your head, not try to get you to move beyond problems. They're trying to steer you in a particular direction that adheres to what it is that they have as their objective, right? Whereas in therapy, you work towards an objective with the therapist. You come up with that objective in unison with them as a team effort, and you work towards it together, right? There is no scientific validity behind the therapeutic message, quote unquote, or therapeutic method in Scientology. It's just total bullshit.
well, it's very difficult to have any proof of anything when it comes to psychology. Like psychology in general has always tried to be a hard science, but it's not, and so it's kind of an insecure science, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and
no?
I find that that kind of categorization of psychology as not a science is often done dismissively and unfairly.
Well, hold on.
Because
it's
basically
trying to be a hard science in a sense, no?
Because at the base of it, like at the most sort of overarching kind of fundamental level, all we're talking about is trying to learn about the mechanisms and the functions of the mind, of the brain, of this kind of aspect of our being, right? And there's diseases and malfunctions of the mind that we need to reckon with, and so psychology and psychiatry and the sciences of the mind are just explorations of, okay, let's try and find what works. What is happening there? Like, let's just first of all, let's just catalog the phenomena,
right?
And then almost as a secondary thing, let's talk about
the patterns
techniques
afterwards
for treatment
right.
and stuff like that. But that's all fundamentally just a very earnest kind of educational enterprise, right? That's science.
There's a certain amount of rigor that goes into things like psychology and psychiatry too, especially when it comes to psychiatry, because that's the more, I guess we'll call it, harder scientific approach to, what the psyche and whatever else. But they do apply the
only because it's trying to do an end run around the what do you call it, kind of abstract ideas of psychology, it's doing an end run around it by saying, you know what, if we mess around with the neurological biochemistry in the brain, then we can achieve results that affect these problems or phenomena that we're uncovering in our psychological science.
Yeah, so I don't think it's necessarily fair to just outright dismiss psychology as a non-science or whatever.
What I was addressing there was that it's a soft science. It's difficult to claim it as a hard science in terms of science. I don't know.
Well,
does that not make sense?
Most of the social sciences are considered to be, I guess, softer.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
and that makes sense, though.
It does, but at the same time, there is that rigor that I was talking about. They apply a certain process to it.
Well, sure, a rigor in the methodology.
Right, exactly.
Approach. Sure.
Yeah, so, like...
I mean, that just makes sense in terms of keeping good notes on what's going on here, sort of thing. Like, the more rigorous the methodology, the more you can collect patterns and see patterns. Further patterns, I guess.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and, like, that becomes really important, especially when it comes to things like the human brain, because... You need to be able to recognize what those patterns are in order to recognize in order to determine the driving factors behind those thought processes, right? Like, I don't know where I was going with that, but
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'm also not sure. Gilles is taking a bathroom break.
Pee time. Pee break.
If you listen closely, you may hear the toilet flush in the background.
Very interesting.
Fascinating. Yes. I guess we're just stalling for time until...
You can pause it if you want to.
Could pause it, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm going to edit this out in post.
That would take effort, Mike.
It would take effort, and you all know me and how I feel about effort. Gilles back, everyone.
Hey, what are you guys doing? I just went to pee, and it was really good.
Gilles
That's
back.
great.
Yeah. I already explained the story of how you're peeing.
Oh, great.
So that's now on record.
This is a highlight of the podcast, I would think, right now. Now we're touching on some good stuff here.
Yeah, psychology, psychiatry, soft versus hard science.
Well, I was seeing some, I guess the reason why I brought up the psychology thing was that I was seeing some similarities with some early Carl Jung experimentation. Like, it seems like maybe they were inspired by it originally.
But the most striking thing about Scientology is its, like, irrational antipathy towards anything related to established science of the mind.
Of course, because their method of Dianetics is the right one.
They're just going, no, focus on us.
Yeah.
Like, dismiss the rest so that you can focus on us, right?
Yeah.
So, knowing that their beliefs are total fucking bullshit, especially with the Xenu thing, blowing up aliens and near volcanoes and having brought them here in intergalactic jetliners, what is it about Scientology that draws people in? What is it that appeals to people?
Well, so the religion kind of blew up in this in the 60s with this, like, kind of new age awakening, right? And this kind of explosion of self-help kind of the self-help genre, right?
Right.
So there's an attraction there because people are just looking for anything to help them out with their neuroses, their anxieties, their...
Yeah, it seems to have certain promises.
Sure, in the beginning that may have been true, but, like, today, you still have people attracted to Scientology, and I don't know what it is that drives them towards it. Beyond, celebrities thinking it can help them with their career and shit. Like, why does the regular average person decide, I'm going to become a Scientologist?
Specifically about the celebrities thing, going back to that, it is remarkable how prominent that, like, aspect of Scientology is, that they have this kind of...
They have a whole department.
They have this focus, they have the celebrity center in LA, and
well, this has, it makes sense for marketing reasons.
Yeah, but the reason why it's seen as an effective marketing strategy, I guess, is because artists and celebrities are seen as kind of a reflection of society, right? So if you've got these these celebrities that are also talking about this Scientology thing, then I think it kind of exaggerates how much prevalence Scientology has in the general public, because a celebrity is seen as
an idol,
not just an idol, but as something coming out of the general public. So anything that
they're seen as
that a celebrity is espousing has to be understood to be a reflection of something that thousands of other people are already doing.
Yeah,
because
it's why they get celebrities to do, spokesperson appearances or things like feed the children in Africa or whatever. It's the largest.
Like look at the Hanukkah song from Adam Sandler. Right. The whole thing is about highlighting all of these. So the whole thing is about highlighting all these celebrities that happen to be Jewish, to kind of combat things like
Adam Sandler.
Anti-Semitism or just ignorance about or just awareness or drum up a bit of sensibility or appreciation for that faith or whatever, and for the people, the segment of the population that's within Judaism and stuff like that. You just let people know that, hey, a bunch of the people that you already love are this religion, so
let's do it.
So let's all be cool together, and that this is a legitimate religion now.
So do you think Scientology is playing on the same kind of thing?
Exactly. It's exactly just that.
So it's the larger than life effect.
Yeah.
Anyway, right? Like, oh my God, these celebrities are Scientologists. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe I'll check it out.
I'm just joining what must be millions of other people.
Right.
Who are Scientologists? It's not some weird scary thing, since we know that there are celebrities and the celebrity population isn't huge, right? So if one of the 100 celebrities that are really influential in your life is a Scientologist, then it must mean that it's a huge thing in culture, and that it's totally legitimate.
Right. I do. I mean, Tom Cruise is very influential in my life. I now know how to jump on a couch properly.
Yeah.
Get excited about the right things. Yeah.
Tom Cruise.
Good point.
Yeah, the whole Tom Cruise thing is fascinating. They bend to some of their policies because he's fucking Tom Cruise, and they don't want to piss him off. They want to do whatever they can to make sure he stays with the church, because he's their biggest asset right now, replacing John Travolta.
Yeah, and apparently that's one of the things that really bugged Leah Remini.
Who's Leah Remini?
So she's
she was a Scientologist for 35 years. She was on King of Queens.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And she's since come out of the church and started an A&E TV show called Scientology in
2
the
seasons
Aftermath.
now. Maybe 3. I don't know.
It's called Scientology in the Aftermath.
Oh, okay.
And
check it out, A&E. Make sure you check it out.
Yeah, and she's interviewing a lot of former members of the Church of Scientology and just exposing all of the abuses and stuff that happen within the church. And she was a member of the church for
35
decades.
years.
Yeah. She's practically a lifelong member. And
so how high did she get up there? How much money did she sink into this?
She spent a lot. She went beyond level 3, where you learn about the Xenu story. She got that firsthand.
And she was kind of a hardliner too, apparently. She's kind of a stickler for...
In the beginning, when she was more adherent to the church's philosophy, she would come out and criticize people who were against Scientology. She would tell people, we're doing our best to save the world, kind of thing. Yeah. She bought into their mandate, but since...
But the problem is her penchant for being a stickler and stuff like that meant that even when some saints in the church end up kind of bending the rules or not following to the letter the edicts of the church, then in order for her to be honest with herself, she has to criticize that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what got her started creating tension with her between her and the church.
And that's another thing. The level.
So she noticed that they were bending the rules for Tom Cruise.
I see. Right. Baby man needs his rules bent for him.
Touching tangentially on something you were saying, but the amount of suspicion within the church is astounding, because one of their edicts is to tattle on your fellow church member if you notice them doing something
Sounds
wrong.
all American, eh?
Boy, it also sounds all German.
Yeah.
Yet the Germans have banned it.
Right.
Now Germans. I was alluding to Nazism.
No,
Right.
the wrong Germans.
The wrong Germans. Yeah.
But going back to that Leah Remini story or the interview that I was watching earlier, like she was saying how whenever she got to a Church of Scientology meeting, she would notice that all the cars in the parking lot were all shitty and run down because people are just spending their money on the fucking church.
You couldn't be rich.
Yeah, like that. They take all your money, and you're required to study for 2.5 hours per day. Per day.
And that's just
so
some
what do you study?
aspect of the studying, though, because you're also being made to work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you can actually be in it like 17 hours a day.
I remember that documentary, Going Clear.
Right.
Yeah.
And there was a large segment on basically like people like slaving away, like building his boat kind of thing.
It was probably at the Sea Org.
That was in the Sea Org back
in the 60s, I guess, when basically he
when
was
he
trying to
created
evade the
Sea Org,
IRS.
when he had that initial fleet of 3 boats.
And they still do it. Like that's still an active branch of the church. It's their religious order. You know, it's their most hardcore adherents join this organization and they spread the faith. But while they're doing it, they're working their asses off under horrible conditions. Right? It's psychological torture. It's physical abuse. You can't contact your family anymore. You belong to us. You're theirs in your entire being. You belong to the Sea Org. Right? It's a fucking cult, and people need to get the hell away from it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have said this, and I, just based on what I've been reading, it's all corroborated. All these stories are independently verifiable.
So
it damages and it ruins people's lives. It's a horrible organization.
Well, I think just being alive in general ruins and destroys people's lives. But
well, this doesn't help.
I can understand how believing a myth, for example, can be something useful. We can use non-truths for function. Let's say we had a myth that promoted good things, whatever they may be. I'm kind of trying to keep it abstract here. What are you guys feeling like the original concept? Like, is there anything that L Ron Hubbard was pushing that could be seen as being some sort of an end goal that was good, or
the only end goal Hubbard had in mind was to rake in as much fucking money as he could
much money as possible.
people who believed his bullshit. There is no redeeming quality behind Scientology.
Well, you know what I mean, though. Like other religions are
explicitly the idea that they push forward explicitly is to make a more ethical world, right? To eliminate war and
right. That going through this auditing, you will be a better person because you will be able to think more clearly and
once you
react more quickly.
You drill down into it, and you start to realize that none of what's being said is actually the end goal. Mm-hmm. That's when it falls apart. Is there like?
But just like what they do with the science of psychology and doing this kind of end run around all of the clinical investigation that you have to do to try and build up a science of the mind, they just try and create whole cloth this technique that he says is the way.
Right.
They do that same thing with ethics and morality generally, that every other religion does too.
Did you say ethnics?
Did I say ethics?
No.
I heard ethics.
There was no N in there.
No. I just said ethics. So just like what Christianity does, where they're basically ripping from the individual the faculty of moral reasoning and moral agency, and like people have free will, but that free will is to choose a morality that is given to them by God. Only God is the one
that is the author of morality.
Right. So the idea of rationality and having a spontaneous moral reasoning or capacity within yourself to imagine what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
That's not within yourself. No. That's evil to even think it. It's the church that gives you what's right and wrong. It's the church that is the source of ethics.
And in particular,
that kind of co-opting of ethics and morality is the ultimate evil of cults and religions and Scientology
and peoples.
And when it comes to
general,
when it comes to Scientology,
it poisons everything.
The idea of thinking critically and rationalizing things and just thinking for yourself is completely eschewed. You're told what to think, you're told what to believe, and it's reinforced through psychological abuse, physical abuse, and the whole idea behind auditing, right? These ideas are drilled into your head until you can no longer exercise your critical thinking faculties, and you are a slave to their ideology. It's the same with any fucking cult. It's the same with religion in general. You know, it robs you of your ability to become an to use Jung's terms, to individualize, or whatever the fuck the thing was. I can't remember at the moment, but to become your authentic self, if you will.
Right. I'm thinking the self-actualization.
Yeah.
Like Maslow?
Yeah.
Is that
At the top of the pyramid, self-actualization.
Right.
You're robbed of that faculty.
It's funny because they seem to be pushing both agendas. Like, it's a self-actualization, but also accompanied with ignorance.
Of course, because the going into it, the superficial description of what Scientology offers sounds really appealing. You can become a better person and get rid of your negativity. You can help mankind. Wow, sign me up. But then they force feed you all of this bullshit.
But then they package it with this totalitarianism, right? Like a kind of psychological or psychic totalitarianism where they have control over whether or not you're actually achieving any type of self-actualization.
Individuation is what I was trying to say earlier.
Got it.
Cool.
Individuation, yeah.
Yes, the Jungian term. Anyway, I didn't fuck it up this time. Cool. But yeah, it's religious fascism.
Yeah.
I have ruled. It is religious fascism.
Now Mark's being a podcast fascist.
Podcast fascist. Final thoughts on the issue of Scientology.
Scientology is a criminal organization. People have the church is guilty of manslaughter through negligence and denial of medical services because of their dogmas and prejudices, and they're guilty of fraud and all kinds of other financial crimes, and it's a friggin' travesty that they've managed to muscle governments into allowing them to continue operating. And label me a suppressive person, but keep the fuck away from them.
I would suggest Scientology seems to be a capitalist success story. Like they are exactly what we should be aiming for.
I love your positivity.
We should aim to manipulate people and get as much money out of people as possible. Like, they are a success story. It really is true, right? Like, they are selling their fish oil and making you work an entire spectrum of snake oil. What did I say? Fish oil? Not snake oil.
Fish oil is the stuff that goes rancid.
And this is why my cult didn't work out, ladies and gentlemen.
That alternative health nuts try to peddle.
Selling you their cod liver oil. But okay, yeah, that's an interesting perspective that I hadn't really considered. Is they are they're the ideal capitalist success story.
Absolutely, man. They've managed to not even have to pay taxes. Like, it is absolutely success.
So would you agree that L Ron Hubbard succeeded in his goal of just fucking making all this money?
Of course he succeeded. Yeah, it seems that way. Yeah. He totally succeeded.
Right.
Crazy guy done win, like, yeah.
I find it incredible how often people are impressed and compelled by straight up narcissists. Like no sooner did L Ron Hubbard die that David Miscavige, this other narcissist, was right behind him, ready to take up the mantle and.
And he didn't have the flowery brain to make it pretty. he's just full on iron
He was just
fisting.
he was the muscle behind it.
Yeah, he's full on iron fisting it, and
right up
and there's just no shortage of people that are gullible and impressed by that shit.
Well, is this not
just like there are gullible and impressionable people who are impressed by some narcissistic silver spoon idiot named Donald Trump, to the point where they're willing to make him the boss of everything just because he says he's the best, or just because he says he's rich.
No one is better at being the best than me. I'm the best at being the best. Believe me, it's amazing.
But capitalism and the way it's set up does reward
it's fucking pathetic.
Sociopathic behavior. Like, the more sociopathic you can be, the more you are able to be successful, the more you're able to climb on top of people's heads, grab their cash while you're going along. Like,
I think that's
that is the capitalist dream right there, you know?
Topic for another episode right there, the capitalist ideology. As for myself, I think you guys have said it all. Like, the Scientology is a criminal organization that does not deserve the success they have. They don't. Like
I just mean deserve. That's a whole other podcast right there.
Yeah, the concept of desert.
Sure. But they're just again, I'll use the word deserve, but they deserve to be wiped off the face of the earth for all the fucking shit that they do to people. They ruin people's lives.
Violence.
To paraphrase Ahmadinejad.
Thanks. I'm an Iranian dictator now. But they fuck with people's lives, they ruin everything, they spread bullshit, and they're a fucking cult.
We are fucking with people's lives right now by even talking and sharing our thoughts on our podcast.
Sharing our opinions?
Yeah.
It's called free speech, right?
Yeah, but still, I'm just saying, like, there is a responsibility in being. Like, we are putting ourselves out there, and it may damage other people. Like, the things that we say, the things we think, the way we behave.
The difference between our podcast and Scientology, aside from the money thing,
well, is the success of it. If we had millions of people listening to our podcast, which we do not, so come on, step it up, people. Get your friends together.
Millions of people, if you'd like to sponsor the show podcast.
And if the Church of Scientology, if you happen to be listening and would like to sponsor the show, we will gladly take your money. In the meantime, though, please stop. Stop everything you're doing, because it's just wrong on so many levels. There's nothing behind it. It's cult-like behavior, and it ruins people's lives. This has been Critical Junction, episode 39. I'm Mark.
I'm Luke.
I'm Joe.
As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, keep thinking critically.